I saw this story from the Media Research Center, Newsbusters, and on its surface, I completely disagree. This appears to be a call from conservatives to deplatform or censor in some way Antifa and far-left groups. I can understand the sentiment, and I do want to read through this because I don't want to pass judgment before we've actually gone through the statements by many conservatives. But let me just say before we read through this, the far left should not be censored, nor should the far right. Violations of the law should be censored. Doxing should be censored. I mean removed. Censored is kind of a loaded term. Political ideology should not be censored. Threats of violence should be removed. Death threats, doxing, etc. It's hard to know where the line is for harassment, so maybe we should just leave that to the block and the mute feature. I do not believe demanding Antifa be banned is the appropriate response because we've seen more violence. Because we've seen what happened to Andy No, I do not think censorship is the response. But I can understand why a lot of conservatives are outraged over the double standard. Conservatives get banned for innocuous things. Even a feminist getting banned for saying men aren't women, though. Meanwhile, you have the left actually calling for violence. I'll say this. If someone on Twitter says something like, hey, we should do X, get rid of it. They're calling for violence. I am not a free speech absolutist, and I don't think the law should necessarily be dictating what is or isn't taken down. However, the problem is inconsistency. If Antifa is going to post violent content, they should be removed. And I think that's the core message here. So let's read what these conservatives have to say from Newsbusters. Writing on Wednesday, Media Research Center President Brent Bozell and other conservative leaders called on Facebook to live up to its own standards when it comes to standing up to violent and extremist groups like Antifa. Bozell explained that, quote, no action has been taken to deplatform this domestic terrorist organization. He added that Facebook is enabling these extremists to commit more violent acts and further spread their hateful message. Here's the challenge. Some of it should be removed, but a blanket ban of all Antifa might not be the appropriate response. That's what they did to the Proud Boys and to some other figures who are on the right. I think if you're not saying things directly, then you shouldn't be banned. The problem, though, is the tacit support and the ability to organize. This is where the conversation becomes complicated. Jordan Peterson's platform ThinkSpot says they'll only remove it with court order. It's actually not a bad idea, but I still kind of disagree with it. We know there has to be a line because the real world is different from the digital world. If someone outside started yelling my personal details, like my address or my phone number, I'm pretty sure they're allowed to do that. However, online, man, I think there's a line to be drawn because that can actually put you in danger, like doxing somebody. But perhaps I'm not right. I don't know. It's really complicated. Let me know what you think on this one. If I believe in public, I can hold up a sign with your phone number on it, with your address, and that's legal. Should it be the same on the internet? The challenge is the reach in the real world is very different to the reach on the internet. I certainly think opinions should be protected, but maybe there should be a line for doxing. Before we read this statement, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, and a physical address. But of course, share this video because YouTube doesn't suggest political content anymore. That means channels like mine. So if you want people to see this and think I do a good job, please suggest it to your friends by sharing it on various platforms. The first statement, quote from the president of the Media Research Center. I don't think I'll be able to read every single statement, but I'll try and read some that I think are prominent because I know who some of these people are. Quote from Brent Bozell. The Antifa-led assaults in Portland this past weekend were not the first instance of violence from the militant leftist group. Antifa's core principles condone and encourage the harassment and physical assault of those that disagree with their beliefs. The DHS has classified their activities as domestic terrorist violence. Facebook has just come out with a major document outlining how some 90 leftist organizations under the leadership of former ACLU executive Lauren Murphy and Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg will be overseeing the site's content. Their community standards certainly condemn violence, and they claim to have always banned individuals or organizations that promote or engage in violence and hate regardless of ideology. And yet no action has been taken to deplatform this domestic terrorist organization. In allowing Antifa to retain its accounts, Facebook is enabling these extremists to commit more violent acts and further spread their hateful message. Facebook must enforce its policies equally. This is not a partisan issue. There should be no place for violent extremists of any kind on Facebook, period. I believe that's actually a fair point. But here's the challenge. there are certainly some far-right groups that we can discernibly say, that's an extremist group that likes violence, okay? I'm not going to name them. I'm not going to get into that for my own safety. We can remove them, and we can point to Antifa as another organization that, though not as bad as many of the fringe far-right groups, it's still very bad and doesn't engage in violence. The problem is, where does the line stop? It's a vague policing. The Proud Boys shouldn't, in the hierarchy of the worst, we have fringe far-right groups, we have Antifa, and then we have the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys, for the most part, aren't actively starting fights. Sometimes they have. They've gotten arrested for it. They've gotten in trouble for it. But typically they'll go march around and then Antifa confronts them. Do we that? So here's one problem is that Facebook has Instagram, Twitter. They have banned the Proud Boys. But Antifa's the one starting the fight. So certainly you'd think Antifa would be banned before the Proud Boys. But therein lies the problem. Then who's next? Antifa gets banned, then the Proud Boys, then what? Any protester who might engage in a protest and they say, oh, but violence broke out? There's no easy way to know where that line is. So while I certainly think Antifa in many instances should be banned because they've actively called for violence and they're not being banned, I can agree with that statement. But insofar as saying that all Antifa should be banned, I completely disagree. You should be allowed to have your silly little 3 arrows on your face tattoo and on your chest, whatever you want to do. Then I know who you are and I know to avoid you because you're crazy. I certainly think there are other worse groups. This is not an equivalence to, you can be worse and still, there can be other groups that are worse and you can still be bad. The point is, you should be allowed to have your opinions. When you cross that line, then action should be taken. Facebook isn't taking action, nor is Twitter. And this is Twitter actively has people saying like, hey, go do X. I'm like, ban that. What are you doing? YouTube does a better job. Let's move down because I want to read specifically content that no offense to the other conservatives, but there are some people I actually am familiar with. And that's particularly Raheem Kassam of Human Events. He writes, let's see. In the last few months, Facebook has blocked Reverend Franklin Graham, censored paid ads by pro-life civil rights activist Alveda King, censored an image of Santa Claus kneeling before the baby Jesus, deeming it violent or graphic content, shut down 2 Facebook pages managed by triple amputee Iraq war vet Brian Kolfage, and removed a post consisting almost entirely of text from the Declaration of Independence. Yet groups openly affiliated with Antifa, a fascist terrorist movement that doesn't just preach violence but continually practice it against innocents, are welcomed with open arms on the pages of Facebook. That's actually a really good point. I believe that's the statement. In what order? Hold on, let me make sure I got the order right. I believe that was the correct. Okay, so no, that wasn't Raheem Kassam. Sorry, that statement was read by the president of WND. Raheem Kassam said, Facebook allows Antifa, the flip side of the same coin as neo-Nazism, and yet they routinely ban middle-of-the-road conservatives, including gay, Muslim, black, and other minorities, simply because they're on the political right. If Facebook wants to highlight why they deserve no legislative protections like Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act and should be treated as a biased monopoly, they could do no better favor to us than continuing this heinous practice. So I believe that was right. So that was the actual statement from Raheem Kassam. Again, no disrespect to the other people I'm not familiar with, but I also want to read Cassie Dillon's because she's someone I'm familiar with on Twitter as well. She is the founder of A Lone Conservative, who writes, the assault of Andy No is absolutely abhorrent, but predictable from Antifa. Conservative college students have felt the wrath of the radical leftist terrorist group at UC Berkeley and other campuses across the country. Facebook's selective outrage over extremism on their platform is disgraceful. There's too many for me to go through, so I'm not going to, I'll link this in the description below, but I want to point out the real issue is the press. And perhaps conservatives don't realize this. They don't do enough journalism. But more importantly, these organizations, Facebook or otherwise, are aligned ideologically with mainstream media. They feel it's safe to hold these positions. So long as the media doesn't take action against Antifa, why would they? However, you get one crazy far-right guy, and the media will write for 10 years about it because it's terrifying rage bait that shocks the average American. When will they wake up to Antifa? I don't know. But we did see CNN report on what happened with Andy No. Possibly the worst thing Antifa could have done was attack Andy No, because all they did was create a massive wave of mainstream press condemning them. Unfortunately, we can see the mask slip on those in the media at left-wing organizations who are still defending Antifa. And so long as that happens, Facebook is not going to take action. The real debate here, how should Facebook deal with this? Should Antifa be banned wholesale? Should anybody who flies the three arrows be banned? I think no, but they've already done it with other symbols. They've done it with the far right. Maybe they'll do it with the far left. I'll leave it there. Let me know what you think about these statements. I think it's dangerous to call for more censorship. And I think we can absolutely call the people, demanding, who call for violence, encourage it or organize it. But if someone wants to have a silly icon and express their opinions, we need to be careful. We're not calling for a blanket censorship. I can't say I'm surprised, though. The double standard is pushing people to these points. So anyway, stick around. One more segment coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you shortly.